Excuse me, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman, I could just
yep.
follow that up. I've been reported back on that. Instead of, say, $330 a month, before the unitary plan was adopted, there was a massive influx. They were doing like $750 a month, and they didn't have the staffing to do it. They've been working hugely, you know, to try and keep up with that, and it's just starting to level off now. They're getting back to normal now. But it was just the anticipation. Developers wanted to get in before the unitary plan, and so it basically more than doubled.
So that'll be a blip rather than a trend.
Yes, I imagine so. And also and now it's slowed down a bit because people are trying to get to grips with the new operational parts of the plan and awaiting appeals processes. So it started to settle down a bit, but it really severely impacted the staff. At the start, we just didn't have enough staff to do it quick enough, and that's why there was a little bit not meeting the targets, but it wasn't due to lack of trying. Yeah.
No, that's a helpful explanation. On the building consents, whenever I say to builders, look, hey, we're doing 97, 98%, they are incredibly cynical and they say, yeah, but on day 19 we get a request for further information and the clock stops and starts again. I mean, I hear it so often that it's not just one or two malcontents. It's a genuine problem out there as these people see it. Can you talk to that? I mean, I do appreciate that with the huge increase in building consents and the people being pirated away from the organisation for higher remuneration, you've got a genuine problem. But how much can we rely on that 97% because the builders say it's not an indication?
So two parts to that. One is it's a combination of factors. Quite often it is a case of the consent application not having all the information required. Yeah. So obviously it is a concern if it's the 19th day before that's raised, which is one reason why the team have actually putting a second metric in place, which is actual working days. So regardless of the stopping of the clock and restarting when information is missing, they are trying to measure now the true number of days elapsed from the day an application is made to it is actually passed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether the other thing that strikes me, and when I look at page 163, where we're hitting nearly 14,000 consents, we're not building anywhere near to that. What's the normal time lag, or is there such a thing as a normal time lag between issuing a consent and a building going on to the site? Is there any trend there that you can help us with? I presume the more consents that you're getting, probably the slower it will be with other bottlenecks to have the buildings actually take place. But so graph number 53.
Yeah. So what I need to check on that one is whether that's actually also the building consents purely for changes to a premise, not necessarily the construction of a new building.
Oh, okay. So that might be an alteration building consent.
Substantial changes requiring a building consent would require that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's not just for a new dwelling. No. Okay. Thank you.
We've got new dwelling separate.
No. Excellent. We have a mover and a seconder, so I'm going to put that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Now going to item 13, and I already have a mover and a seconder, so we have Councillor Simpson and Councillor Collins seconding. Francis and Kevin. Again. That's fine. Thank you.
This is for the groceries. So just while those are being handed out, just refer to that single page again. So this is now moving on to item 13.
Well, while they've been handed out, we'll actually just get Sue can give an answer to John, Councillor Watson, just about the stadium investment, so we're quite clear.
Thank you, Chair. It was Councillor Watson's question in at the conclusion, I think, of the RFA session. Just to clarify with you what is in the LTP, the 2015 to 2025 LTP, there is a total amount of $60 million in the LTP spread over the 10-year period for stadiums. 29 million of that is CapEx for redevelopment, and of that 29 million, 12 million relates to Western Springs. The balance of 31 million, making up the total between the 29 and 60 million, is renewals, which on average are $3 million per annum. Now, just with respect to Western Springs, Chris Brooks, the Chief Executive RFA, made reference to a business case to their board. The information that I have, Councillor Watson, is that they are working on that in February, and council officers will be involved. That will be a significant portion, obviously, of the information that's required to inform the 2018 to 2028 LTP.
Right, Kevin, again, we'll hand it out.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, look, it was really just referring back to that single page again, just to reinforce the notion that what you've just seen was Jenny, I should say, presenting on the parent account. This is now the group account that Francis is presenting. And it's just worth pointing out, by the way, for information, that this is the only council that does report externally on a group basis. By legislation, we are required. Yes, so all the other councils in the country will actually report on the parent alone. We're in a unique situation because of the nature of our CCO structures, that it's recognised that to better inform the public, you really need to pick up the entire group to show all the activities that are undertaken by our CCOs. So in that context, I hand over to Francis to run through this short presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon, councillors. And just to start off with, I thought it would just be useful, this just a reminder, this is the group report for the 3 months, and this combines both the CCOs, which you had reporting earlier, as well as Jenny's report on the council parent alone. So that's what we're talking about here. So just a bit of a few reminders. The actual results that we show here and that are actually in the quarterly report, which was in the agenda, is compared against the phased annual plan. And as Jenny also mentioned, we recognise rates revenue at the time we issue the rating notices. That's a requirement of the accounting standards. So we end up with a large surplus which decreases as the year goes by. And as obviously as expenses are incurred. So the statement of financial performance, overall you could see that most of those are showing green, which means that we're within 1% tolerance of the actual budget. The ones that are below the yellow one is fees and user charges, and that's mainly due to lower volumes from the port during the quarter, as well as public transport income and parking income being lower. Public transport is really due to the uptake of the HOP card, which has been successful. So when you use the HOP card, you actually have a lower charge than if you pay cash. So that's having a bit of an effect, as well as obviously with all the work going on around the city, on-street parking is reduced. So that's impacting that. And then the bottom one, which is the red one, which is the net other losses, that is the fair value movement of our what we call derivatives, but it's a non-cash item. It's our borrowings that we have, and I'll talk about that a little later, just as to why we do that and what that causes, and why, from our perspective and from the ratepayer perspective, it doesn't cost us any more. It's merely a movement that is required by the accounting standards. But I'll rather talk about that just now. Just as a high-level summary, that's just to give you a graphical explanation of the revenue, and as you can see, there's very little movement or significant changes there, as well as at a group level expenditure. Again, they are fairly on track. The statement of financial position, I just want to highlight two numbers there. The first one is current assets and the movement there of 1.5 billion. That relates to the revenue again. Obviously, we've billed all our rates, but we only collect them during the year, so we've got a large debtor balance. The other item that's included in there is that in September, at the end of September, we were required to repay, or we agreed to repay an EMU loan to the government of 490 million. So prior to that, we actually raised some debt, and if you look at the bottom, there's under current liabilities, there's 404 million. That was debt that we raised in order to pay that money. So we had the cash sitting in the bank, and we had a higher debt number to cover that. But that has now been paid and is refinanced with cheaper debt. So that's why we did it. Right, now I mentioned that I'd talk a bit about derivatives. And it's really that loss figure that we saw earlier. So what are they? Derivatives it's a financial hedge contract between two parties to buy and sell financial assets at a specified date. So our specialist treasury team and also Watercare have a similar team that manage the risks that council has around both the finance or the interest charge and the foreign exchange. So what we do is we borrow in floating loans, and we convert them into fixed interest loans. And also all our foreign borrowings, and Auckland Council is the only council in the country that is allowed to borrow externally, directly. And it's on the basis that all that foreign currency that we borrow, we immediately hedge it back into New Zealand dollars. So that's the foreign exchange risk. Another way of looking at it is if you look at a home mortgage, when you fix your home mortgage, the reason you fix it is you know that no matter whether the interest rates go up or down, you're going to pay a fixed amount. And that's exactly what we're doing at council with our borrowings. We need to make sure that we keep our borrowing costs, which are significant, well within the target that we set in the LTP. So we're trying to get certainty around that. The problem is that the accounting standards say that you actually need to, whether you've taken out long-term debt, you have to fair value it to current rates. And those current rates, as you know, have been moving down up until about September. And so we were incurring these losses. But when we come to actually pay that debt back, we will pay what we expected to pay, because the short-term rates will move to what we actually have to pay. That's just the way it works. But interestingly, since November, we've had a bit of a Trump effect, and what's happened is that interest rates globally have started to move up. So by the end of November, we actually had, for this current year, we've got a net favourable movement of about 156 million. So it's gone from 120 million unfavourable to 156 favourable. So that's the movement that's happened in a space of 2 months, just because the interest rates have moved. So that's why we fix, because we can't take that volatility in our accounts, because we'd be speculating, and we're not allowed to do that. So hopefully that's some useful background. The next slide just shows you the total capital spend and the key projects for the group. And for the group, we spent about 74% of what we planned to spend. So we plan to spend 453 million. We've actually spent 335 million, so we're about 26 million shy. For the year, we've got a budget on the group of about 1.9 billion. And last year, we were close to 80%. We delivered on that. So you're probably looking at delivering about 1.6, 1.7 billion over the year based on historic information. The following slide I've just given you just gives you some breakdown by theme and some of the reasons why, for example, transport or water care are behind or on their delivery, just at a high level. Now, the credit rating financial ratios, this is a key ratio that our treasury team and that particularly the finance team and the council, monitor very closely. This is the key ratio, one of the key ratios that Standards & Poor's use in order to do our credit rating. So from our perspective, it's critical that we remain below the 270 mark. For council, we've set a 265 mark because we think that that's where we've got to keep it, so we've got a bit of headroom because these things can move quite significantly over time. And so what that is showing is that at the moment we're fine, provided we stick to our current capital committed in the LTP based on our current revenue streams. Obviously, if we want to change and spend more money, we can't borrow too much because that'll affect this, so we have to get more revenue.
Okay.